Welcome back. Today we're looking at a transcript from Call Her Daddy, the big interview Alex Cooper did with the one and only Avril Lavigne.
Yeah, a huge get. And they cover everything, right? Greatest hits, her childhood, and yes, even the Melissa conspiracy theory.
They do, and look, it's a fun listen, but as a piece of interview architecture,
It's a bit of a structural train wreck. And honestly, it's a masterclass in what not to do if you want to build a real narrative.
okay, train wreck is strong, but I know what you mean. The first thing that it jumped right out at me was the speed.
The speed, yes.
I mean, we were bouncing from tour logistics to hair texture. Then suddenly we're playing childhood hockey, and then boom, we're talking about getting fired from a chicken shop.
It's conversational whiplash. That is the only way I can describe it. You read this, and it doesn't feel like a story unfolding.
No.
It feels like someone is just running down a checklist of fun facts. Like they're terrified of staying on any single topic for more than 30 seconds.
But isn't that just, I don't know, the modern style? The TikTok era? Maybe the goal is just to keep the energy super high.
I get that argument, I do. High energy is great, but there's a huge difference between pace and just chaos. When an interview feels like scrolling a For You page, you lose any chance of real emotional depth.
Okay, give me an example. Where did the speed really kill the vibe for you?
There's a bit right near the start. They're talking about the Hello Kitty tour bus. It's this amazing visual, right? It's pink, it's her home.
Right.
Then, without even taking a breath, we jump to a story about a fan wearing a wedding dress. And then bam, we're deep into a conversation about hair straighteners.
I remember that. I was still trying to picture the bus when we were suddenly on flat irons.
Exactly. And that's the cost of that velocity. An interesting door opens, the tour bus, her entire lifestyle, and we just sprint past it to the next one.
It just disorients you.
And it probably prevents the guest from ever really settling in.
You can't get deep if you're constantly bracing for the next random question.
So if you're fixing this, what's the move? You don't want to spend 20 minutes on a bus, right? That would be boring.
No, you use what I call thematic buckets. It's like sorting laundry. You don't just throw everything in at random, you group things. So you create these little worlds, like this is the early grind world, and we're going to stay here for a bit.
Precisely, you cluster the topics. The early grind, the creative process, the public persona. It lets the listener's brain settle in, instead of constantly scrambling to catch up.
Okay, so let's rewrite that bus moment using that idea. How do you connect a tour bus in 2024 to her childhood in the 90s?
You use the contrast. She says the bus is her home now. So you ask, this pink Hello Kitty paradise is your home now. What was your bedroom like back in Nepali? And how did that Hello Kitty vibe square with the whole Sk8er Boi image everyone had of you?
Ooh, I like that. You're connecting her current reality to her roots. It makes the bus meaningful, not just a quirky fact.
It turns a list into a story about identity.
What about the chicken shop story? That was a great little anecdote. She got fired.
And in the transcript, it just pivots right into her hair, which is a total tragedy because that story is gold.
So what's the better bridge?
You connect it immediately to her work ethic today. You ask, you wrote the song My World about being fired from that job because you felt disposable. How does that memory influence how you treat your own crew on this massive tour today?
That's good. You connect the past struggle directly to the current success.
And that's the difference between a chat and a real interview. One just kills time, the other actually reveals character.
Speaking of character, let's talk about the host's character, because that dynamic was, interesting.
Interesting is a very polite word for it.
Look, I get it. Alex Cooper is a fan. She's sharing stories about wearing her brother's wide tie to look like Avril, making embarrassing music videos. I actually found it kind of endearing.
And rapport is essential, you're absolutely right, but there's a tipping point.
A tipping point into what?
Where rapport becomes, narcissism. The weakness here is that the host's superfan energy starts to cannibalize the guest's airtime.
Cannibalize is a strong word.
But it's accurate. Look at the transcript. The host spends so long contextualizing her own experience. She talks about her acne, her busted look in home videos. She's painting a very vivid picture of herself.
And what's Avril doing while all this is happening?
She's just validating the host. She's forced to say, "That's so cute," or "You should put that on TikTok." The interview becomes this validation loop for the interviewer, not an exploration of the guest.
I see that now. It's almost like the host is auditioning for Avril's approval. See how much I loved you? Please tell me I was a cool fan.
Exactly. And the listener is just sitting there thinking, I really didn't tune in to hear about your brother's tie.
So how do you fix this without turning the host into a robot? That personal connection is real.
You use a technique I call the context question pivot. You briefly state the fan connection, that's the context, the bridge, but you immediately pivot to a question about the guest. You pass the baton. You don't hang on to it.
Okay, walk me through it with that home video story.
Right. So instead of a long story about how busted the holes felt, you just say, I was one of those girls making videos in my bedroom, trying to copy that necktie and tank top look. When you saw an army of girls at your first shows dressed exactly like you, did you feel a responsibility to lead us? Or were you just a kid dressing yourself?
Wow, that is a massive shift.
It is.
You're using your nostalgia as evidence for a much bigger question.
You shift the focus from look at me to what was the psychological weight of that on you? It forces her to reflect on her influence.
Not just say, "Aw, thanks."
And you do the same with the style stuff. The host lists her own clothes, the skinny jeans, the sweatband. A stronger version would be to ask about the business side. We all wore those ties because you fought for them. Were there moments where the label, where L.A. Reid tried to put you in a bubblegum pop-pop? How did you fight for your identity in a room of executives when you were 16?
That gives her credit for a battle she actually fought.
And that's what we want, the behind-the-scenes reality, not just an I love you fest.
Speaking of behind the scenes, let's get to the music, because this part, for me, was the most frustrating.
This was the single biggest missed opportunity in the entire text.
We have one of the biggest songwriters of her generation in the room, and the actual talk about the songs it's so surface level.
Right. They touch on these moments of pure artistic genius and just treat them like casual anecdotes.
Like writing Girlfriend in 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Or Head Above Water coming to her when she was literally bedridden, accepting she might die.
These are monumental moments, and the host's reaction is just, that's amazing, and then moves on. We get the wow factor, but we get zero how factor. It just reinforces this myth that great songs are magic tricks.
Well, maybe the fear is that getting technical is boring for the audience?
That's such a common misconception. People love deconstruction. Look at a show like Songwriting. The key is to use what I call process probes.
Process probes?
Yeah. When an artist says, I pulled a rabbit out of a hat, you don't just clap. You stop the car and you say, show me the hat. Where was the rabbit hiding?
I love that. So let's apply that to Head Above Water. That was such a heavy, visceral moment.
It was, but the interview stays on the trauma, not the art that came from it. A better question would be, you're in this moment of accepting death. Does the melody come first or the lyric? And how do you emotionally prepare to perform a song born from that specific trauma, night after night? Does it re-traumatize you?
That adds so much more weight to it. It makes you think about the actual toll of being an artist.
It moves the conversation from just, I was sick, to the complex relationship between trauma and performance.
And for Girlfriend, the total opposite energy. It's fast, it's fun.
She says she asked her producer for a punk riff, and the host just says it's a banger. The better question is, what is it about a riff that unlocks a hit in 2 minutes versus one that's a dead end? What was it in that specific chord progression that just handed you the lyrics?
It forces her to actually analyze her own intuition.
Which is fascinating. We want to know how the sausage is made, especially when it's a global #1 hit.
Okay, we have to address the elephant in the room, the Melissa thing.
Yes, the conspiracy theory. That she died and was replaced by a body double?
The host brings it up, but the way she does it, it felt so awkward. She basically apologizes for asking, calls herself a freak blogger.
And it's a perfect example of how not to handle tabloid topics. By framing it as, I know this is dumb, she just gives Avril an easy out.
Which is exactly what happened. Avril says it's funny, and the conversation dies.
A total dead end. But you shouldn't avoid the topic. The rumor itself is trash, but the existence of the rumor is fascinating. You just have to reframe it.
How do you reframe that without sounding like a college professor?
You turn a gossip question into a sociological one. The theory is really about the public refusing to let a woman age, right?
Oh, that's a really good angle.
So instead of asking, does it annoy you? You ask, this theory is really about the public being obsessed with you not aging. Do you feel like the industry and the fans are trying to lock you into being your 17-year-old self forever?
Damn. That completely changes the game. It becomes a conversation about ageism and identity.
Exactly. It gives her something real to chew on. Or you could ask, how do you maintain a sense of self when the public sees you as either immortal or an imposter?
That turns a throwaway moment into a deep dive on the psychology of fame.
And honestly, if you're the artist, you're probably relieved to get a smart question about it for once instead of just having to laugh it off again. Guests want to be challenged.
So really, when you boil it all down, it all comes back to being intentional.
It does. with the structure, the role of the host, the questions about the art, everything. The goal is always to move from the superficial to the substantial.
Okay, let's recap the main points for the listener who submitted this.
First, structure. Group your questions into thematic buckets. Avoid that conversational whiplash.
Second, use your fandom as a bridge, not the destination. Leverage your personal connection to frame a deeper question about the guest's experience.
Third, dig into the how. Use those process probes. When you hear about a moment of genius, don't just marvel at it. Ask them to deconstruct it for you.
And finally, elevate the gossip. Reframe those tabloid topics into meaningful questions about fame, society, and identity. Make it a question worth answering.
Exactly.
To the listener who sent this in, thank you. This was a fantastic text to work with, and I really hope these suggestions help elevate that next big conversation.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to edit for depth. Send us your next draft. We'd love to see it.
Until next time, keep challenging the work.
And keep asking better questions.